Talking about Meghan, she's making a shock return to Hollywood 8 years after she quit the industry.
Breaking news, Meghan Markle has sensationally returned to the world of acting.
Hollywood didn't just get a surprise this week, it got a plot twist.
They are massive.
You ever miss acting?
Sometimes.
The kind that makes executives look up from their phones.
Sometimes, but you know what, actually, having a large team, being back on set with Love Meghan was great because I realized how much I had missed my crew.
Publicists start dialing crisis teams, and insiders whisper in studio hallways.
I love being around a crew.
Yeah, it must be hard to let that go.
Yeah.
Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, who once very confidently declared she had moved on from acting, was photographed on a film set in Pasadena. The production is called Close Personal Friends, backed by Amazon MGM Studios, with a cast that includes Lily Collins, Brie Larson, and Jack Quaid, people who didn't have to marry into royalty to be considered A-list.
She's going to be starring alongside Lily Collins, Brie Larson, and Jack Quaid in a new movie, Close Personal Friends.
But here's the part raising eyebrows across Los Angeles. Meghan isn't returning as a character. She's playing herself. After nearly 8 years away from Hollywood, her big comeback role is Meghan Markle, a self-referential cameo that feels less like a creative choice and more like a very strategic test balloon. Because insiders say this isn't about art, it's about survival. Reputation survival, career survival, image survival. And the timing of this return is no coincidence.
Now this is a great ensemble, right? And Meghan is going to be very uncomfortable surrounded by these proper, highly skilled actors. Acting is not a great skill of Meghan's, but she is a household name, which is likely why Amazon Studios have decided to put her in this film.
For years, Meghan presented acting as something she had risen beyond, a past life, a stepping stone, a chapter completed. In multiple interviews, she dismissed the idea of ever stepping back in front of the camera unless it was for something meaningful, transformative, world-changing, and yet, here she is, quietly sliding back into Hollywood through a side door in a small role production sources describe as carefully controlled and minimally demanding. On paper, the film is about two couples, one famous, one not, who meet on vacation in Santa Barbara and try to become friends. A light premise, a breezy script, but to those watching closely, the similarities to Meghan's real-life attempts to build friendships with Hollywood's elite are almost too obvious to be accidental. The exact same week this production surfaced, Page Six published a widely circulated report citing multiple Hollywood insiders who claim the industry is exhausted by the Sussexes. Not annoyed, not confused, exhausted. The goodwill that once surrounded their break from royal life has, according to those insiders, been drained completely. People are tired of them, one source said. The act has gotten old, and that's the phrase that's sticking in Hollywood's memory, the act. Because whether Meghan intended it or not, this return reads like a mirror held up to her own story. The Duchess, who said she had evolved past Hollywood, is now dipping her toe back in the pool. Not to redefine herself, but to test whether the water is even warm enough for her to enter. And here's where the story turns. Insiders on the production are under strict confidentiality orders. Studio representatives refuse to comment. The set is described as controlled and tightly managed. That kind of secrecy doesn't happen when a studio is excited about a casting choice. It happens when they're concerned, not about publicity, but about backlash. Because if this return is seen as desperate or opportunistic, or timed suspiciously against royal headlines, it could backfire instantly.
Meghan Markle's latest on-set appearance feels to me like yet another example of her following Sarah Ferguson's post-royal career path.
Most people think the story ends here, with Meghan simply easing back into acting, but that's just the surface. The real story begins when you hear what Hollywood insiders said after her first day on set. And that's where things start to shift. From the outside, the photos looked harmless. Meghan on set, smiling, hair softly waved, wearing a casual but curated wardrobe designed to project effortlessly relatable. The entertainment press ran predictable headlines about her return to her roots and reconnecting with a past passion. But industry watchers noticed something much more telling: the silence from Amazon MGM. When studios are proud of a casting choice, they issue bold press releases, share behind-the-scenes photos, and let their marketing teams do the loudest work. But this time, the studio declined to comment. Publicists refused to expand. Sources were told not to confirm she is in the film. That kind of quiet isn't caution, it's hesitation. And that's because just days before these on-set images surfaced, Page Six published a deeply sourced report claiming Hollywood had collectively lost interest in the Sussex brand. According to insiders quoted in that report, executives are no longer returning calls, opportunities are drying up, and the once overwhelming curiosity surrounding Harry and Meghan has evaporated. People are sick of them, one source said. There is no appetite left. When a narrative like that hits the industry bloodstream, it spreads fast, which means Meghan's cameo wasn't simply a return to acting. It was a response, a carefully timed attempt to counter a narrative of rejection before it hardens. Here's where things become even more revealing.
Meghan's decision to play herself in this movie even mirrors Fergie's cameo in Friends. I'd also say that the timing is striking, coming just as Page Six published a scathing piece claiming Hollywood has lost interest in the Sussexes.
Netflix, the company that once gave Harry and Meghan a reported multi-year, multi-million-dollar production deal, recently downgraded that partnership to a first-look agreement. In Hollywood terms, that's the difference between "we're invested in you and we'll take a look if you happen to have something worthwhile." It signaled a shift from expectation to skepticism, and that shift didn't happen in isolation. Spotify ended their deal after Meghan's Archetypes podcast failed to maintain listener engagement. Their second podcast deal, announced with Lemonada Media, has already been delayed. Their Netflix cooking show underperformed. Their lifestyle brand release fizzled out after a brief flash of curiosity. All of this paints a picture of a public image strategy that's struggling to find its footing. Hollywood isn't unforgiving when someone fails. It's unforgiving when someone fails repeatedly while still behaving as if they're owed admiration. The perception forming behind closed doors, according to multiple insiders, is that Meghan carries herself like someone who sees collaboration as something others must prove worthy of, not a two-way exchange. And when that attitude meets disappointing commercial results, the industry quietly steps back. But the most consequential reaction wasn't coming from executives. It was coming from the people in the room with them. Former staffers, publicists, assistants, and project partners have been speaking with reporters for years, describing Meghan as demanding, inflexible, quick to dismiss professional advice, and prone to emotional volatility behind the scenes. In most cases, Hollywood ignores employee gossip. Powerful people can have difficult reputations if the work delivers results. But when there's no hit project, no breakout success, no consistent follow-through, those stories start to carry weight.
While insiders insist Meghan is simply testing the waters for a return to acting, I can't help but wonder if the movie leak was a calculated move to distract from the negative headlines coming out of Page Six.
That's what makes this cameo so symbolic. Meghan returning to Hollywood as herself is less a creative choice and more a question. Will the industry still accept me? And the truth is, nobody has answered yet. Not the studio, not the cast, not the test audiences, not the critics. Meghan has put herself back in the spotlight, but she's no longer controlling the angle of the light. And the set environment itself revealed even more, because once cameras rolled, the difference between the glossy PR narrative and the whispered on-the-ground reality became impossible to ignore. Insiders present during Meghan's days on set describe an atmosphere that was not tense exactly, but careful. People magazine pushed the narrative that Meghan was warm, approachable, and easygoing, but the language of those quotes felt polished, rehearsed, and PR-guided, the kind of phrasing that isn't spoken, it's approved. Meanwhile, on background, multiple crew members painted a very different tone. They described a production environment where everyone seemed hyper-aware of Meghan's presence, of what was said around her, how she was spoken to, and how she might interpret tone. One insider put it bluntly, people were polite, very polite. Too polite. And in Hollywood, excessive politeness is rarely a compliment. It means people are being cautious, not comfortable. Meghan didn't show up demanding royal treatment. That would be too obvious. Instead, what emerged was something subtler. The awareness that if anyone slipped, reacted poorly, disagreed with her, corrected her, or simply moved too fast around her, it could become a headline.
Meghan Markle is returning to acting for the first time in 7 years. According to multiple outlets, the Duchess of Sussex is set to return to her acting roots for a new movie called Close Personal Friends, starring Lily Collins and Brie Larson.
Meghan wasn't a castmate. She was a fragile PR object, and that creates a rotating pressure field around a set. This is where the context matters. Hollywood is already familiar with Meghan's temperament, not from tabloids, but from the Sussex Survivors Club, a group of former staffers who supported each other privately after working for Harry and Meghan, several of whom spoke to The Hollywood Reporter. Their stories didn't describe incompetence. They described control, morning messages before dawn, constant changes in direction, emotional outbursts that came with consequences. Even seasoned professionals reportedly walked away from Sussex operations because the environment became unsustainable. When that pattern follows someone back into Hollywood, people notice. That's why Meghan's cameo role is so revealing. The character she is playing herself does not require direction. It does not require interpretation. It does not require emotional range. It is the safest possible performance for an actress whose reputation cannot afford to fail. And yet, the stakes are higher than any role she has ever played. Because if audiences reject Meghan playing Meghan, then the industry narrative hardens into something irreversible. The brand does not work anymore. There is also the matter of who isn't in the movie, Prince Harry. The film follows a celebrity couple navigating blurred boundaries with a regular couple. A perfect chance for Harry to join her on screen. Yet producers did not include him. Meghan did not push for him, and insiders say Harry was not welcome on set. This suggests something quietly significant. Meghan's return is not a Sussex project, it is a Meghan project. For the first time since the Oprah interview, she is stepping forward without him as part of the storyline. And according to Page 6, Harry is not pleased about the direction this takes them. Sources leaked that Harry is deeply uncomfortable with how much of their private life Meghan is now publicly sharing, especially the recent social media posts that briefly exposed their children's faces before being edited. He reportedly loathes how performative their home life has become. The irony is unavoidable. While Meghan steps closer to the spotlight, Harry is trying to retreat from it. But here's where the story deepens. This film isn't just about Meghan testing Hollywood. It's about Meghan testing life without Harry as the co-brand. And the reaction inside their marriage? That's where the real rupture begins. Because what happens next doesn't just affect a movie set. It affects the future of their partnership and their public identity. If the acting cameo were simply a career experiment, Hollywood would shrug and move on. But what's unfolding now suggests something much more strategic and much more personal. Meghan's return to set coincides with a period where her public partnerships are weakening and her marriage dynamic is shifting in ways both subtle and visible. On the outside, Harry and Meghan continue to present themselves as a united front. But insiders say this unity is now more performance than reality. Page 6's report did not just claim Harry disliked Meghan's new online sharing, it claimed he loathed it. That word was chosen carefully. It suggests something deeper than discomfort, something closer to resentment, particularly because, at the same time Meghan is pushing further into the public sphere, Harry is trying to retreat from it. His recent interviews and foundation work highlight digital privacy, child protection, and what constant public exposure does to mental health. Meanwhile, Meghan has reactivated herself as a lifestyle personality, a filmed presence, and now, once again, an actress. Their brand, which once relied on unity, is quietly splitting into two narratives, and the acting comeback is where those narratives visibly diverge. On set, one detail stood out to crew members. Meghan did not speak about Harry. Not in passing conversation, not in small talk, not even when the film's storyline, theoretically, could have invited discussion about couples and public life. Meghan kept the subject compartmentalized, polite, controlled, almost formal. That distance isn't accidental. It's branding. Meghan is positioning herself as Meghan, the individual rather than Meghan, one half of the royal escape arc. And here's the part that observers say is sending shockwaves through certain circles. This is the first public move she has made that does not rely on the Sussex narrative to exist. Meghan chose a role where she plays herself, but in a story that has nothing to do with Harry. Hollywood, always watching the subtext more closely than the script, doesn't miss a message like that. The Meghan brand is attempting to stand alone. And that comes just as Harry's influence, leverage, and public shine are fading. Meanwhile, the timing could not be more pointed. Meghan's acting return announcement broke on the very same day Prince William launched his Earthshot tour in Brazil, a global initiative with world leaders, environmental innovators, and dignitaries. William was photographed barefoot in the sand, playing volleyball with underprivileged children, a moment that instantly went viral not because of PR manipulation, but because it felt unforced, authentic. The contrast was unavoidable. William fulfilling royal duty with sincerity, Meghan staging a comeback that appeared choreographed down to the lighting. The media didn't have to draw comparisons. They appeared naturally, side by side in the news cycle. And for Harry, that contrast hits a sensitive nerve. He has spent years defining himself in opposition to the royal institution. But William's rising global stature means that every time Meghan makes a move to reclaim relevance, Harry is forced to face the uncomfortable question of what he left behind and what he has left to stand on now. And here's where everything narrows into the emotional core. If Meghan's next identity is Hollywood figure and Harry's next identity is private advocate, they are no longer moving together. They are moving parallel. And those lines do not run forever without crossing. The real fallout hasn't begun yet. It starts when audiences react to Meghan playing herself and decide what version of her they believe is real. What happens next depends on something Hollywood understands better than any palace, PR team, or publicist: audience response. Because Meghan playing herself on screen isn't just a cameo, it's a referendum. Viewers won't be judging her performance, they'll be judging her likability, her sincerity, her ability to exist without the protective layer of royal narrative framing her every move. And that is the part no strategy team can control. If audiences respond with warmth, if they feel curiosity again, if they see something relatable in the version of Meghan that appears on screen, then she gets her reset, a second act, a reintroduction. But if viewers reject it, if they see calculation, performance, or the same contradictions that have drained her public goodwill, then this moment becomes something else entirely, the point where the spotlight stops following her. Meanwhile, Hollywood's highest circles are watching this play out with clinical precision. Meghan's re-entry isn't just about whether she can act, it's about whether she can be welcomed. Real power in the industry isn't built from headlines. It's built from relationships, unspoken alliances, loyalty earned over time. And that has always been the challenge. In royal circles, status is inherited. In Hollywood, status is granted, then revoked, then granted again, based on merit, reputation, collaboration, and most importantly, humility. The insiders quoted in Page 6 and The Hollywood Reporter weren't criticizing Meghan for ambition. They were criticizing her for believing she had already arrived, without putting in the groundwork that makes longevity possible. The entertainment world is full of reinvention stories, but the successful ones always begin with accountability, reinvestment, and patience. So far, Meghan has tried to skip directly to applause, and that's why this cameo matters. It's the first time in years she will stand in front of the public without a crown, a title dispute, or a scandal driving the attention. Just her, just Meghan, and that's the moment that determines whether people lean in or look away. Then there's Harry. The man who once embodied rebellion now appears weary, frustrated, and, if insiders are to be believed, increasingly sidelined. His discomfort with Meghan's growing public exposure suggests a deeper incompatibility in the direction of their lives. He wants smaller rooms. She wants larger stages. He wants privacy. She wants spotlight. And when a relationship is built on the promise of shared escape, diverging destinations can feel like betrayal. If Meghan's Hollywood comeback succeeds, she becomes independent again, publicly, financially, socially. If it fails, she will be blamed, and Harry will be pulled into the fallout. That is the unspoken tension hovering behind every camera flash, every stage paparazzi walk, every leaked insider quote. They are not simply navigating fame, they are negotiating identity, which is why the real question emerging now isn't about whether Meghan can act. It's this: who is Meghan Markle when the audience stops clapping? And what happens to a performance when the performer no longer knows where the stage ends and real life begins? Because the role she is stepping into now, the role of herself, is the most difficult one she has ever played. And this time, there are no retakes. What do you think? Is this Meghan's rebirth or her final overplayed move? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe because this story is nowhere near finished. The next chapter is already forming, and trust me, when it hits, the fallout will be impossible to ignore.